The nonprofit MBA purpose is to provide new business insights and fresh creative ideas for executive directors and their teams that will help them improve their organization. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnik.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and for those of you who do not know me, I am the co-founder of Financing Solutions. And Financing Solutions, just so everybody knows, in the last 14 years, we have been the leading provider of lines of credit for small nonprofits in the United States. Yes, it's not just the leading provider. We are the largest provider of lines of credit to small nonprofits. And you may not even know that there's a company that does that out there. It's a very popular product. If you think you're unusual, that you have ups and downs in cash flow, you're not. It's very common amongst not just nonprofits, but businesses too. And if you're interested in learning more about a line of credit for your organization, please visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. And today I'm very excited to be speaking with Jessica McLean from Girl Scouts Nations Capital. And today we're going to be talking about women's leadership skills in the nonprofit sector, how to overcoming barriers and building a future of inclusive leadership. Jessica E. McLean serves as the Chief Financial Officer for Girl Scouts Nations Capital. In this role, she has oversight of a $22 million budget and strategic responsibility for finance, property, product, program, retail, merchandise, and business operations. Prior to transitioning to the not-for-profit industry, Jessica spent over 11 years in public accounting. Jessica is a very active volunteer and has received numerous awards and accolades for her work. She earned her bachelor's degree in business administration from Towson University and her master's degree in accounting from George Washington University. She is also a certified public accountant licensed in Virginia. Jessica, welcome to today's Nonprofit MBA podcast.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you too. It's a good topic. I'm going to enjoy this one. I actually had to slow Jessica down because before I hit the live button on the podcast, we were already getting into the conversation about leadership skills. And, it's a good topic. I think, a lot of people who are listening to this podcast are smaller nonprofits. They're under $5 million in size. And you have to learn how to be a leader. If you think it comes natural, it just doesn't. And there are parts of it that might come natural, but you certainly will become a better leader 10 years, 20 years from now if you work at it. And, experience really matters when it comes to leadership. Degrees, not so much, but experience really does matter. So, Jessica, from your experience, where do you see and this is more specifically about women's leadership. Where do you see how women's leadership over the last let's say for the last decade, has differed from male leadership?
Absolutely. Great question, Stephen. I really saw this change during COVID, where the need for having leaders that have empathy, are supportive, caring, understanding, listen became so important. And there's studies that have shown that women tend to have those skills and hone those skills better than men do. And we all remember how tough it was for all of us to navigate during COVID with the loss of loved ones and family and children at home and trying to care for, and losing jobs. It was tough. And I really believe that those skills that women have and been able to hone, now people are understanding should be a part of the culture of our organization. It needs to be a part of who we are. We should be employers that care. We should be employers that are empathetic. Should be employers that are inclusive and listen to our employees and give them a place to have a voice and be heard. And so for us, that's awesome that this is something that some people would say is innate in us. And now we get to bring that into the workplace because people see there is a need for it, and which to me I think is gives women a great opportunity the generations have changed, and what our younger employees need from their employers is different. They want those, some people say soft skills, some people call them human skills. I've heard different terms being used. But our younger employees, they want that. They expect that from their employers. And so it's important that we have to now shift, as many of us have done, and make sure, again, we're intentional in incorporating those aspects of leadership within our organizations.
An important part of this title is the word inclusive. So when we're talking about leadership skills, tell me what you think. What do you mean by that?
So when I think about the word inclusive, it is changing one, how we view getting input. That it's not just a kind of a top down or whatever the leader of the organization says goes, but it's hearing other perspectives because people bring different experiences, different paths, knowledge, perspective. We should be able to hear that and bring that into the decision making process and not believe because we're the leader or leaders of an organization, we know everything, we have all the answers. We have blind spots as well. And that in my view, we are empowering our employees when we're saying, I want to hear from you. What do you think? What could we be doing differently? What improvements could we make? That is so empowering for employees. But again, it helps with that inclusivity piece and that I'm heard, my voice is valued, and that it helps me be more engaged and connected to the organization. And so when an employee feels that they're in a safe space to be heard and given the opportunity to be heard, that to me brings that aspect of inclusivity. Again, different perspectives, experience, and voices.
Yeah, I was going to push back a little bit on you, but after you kind of gave us some examples right now, I agree. I agree with you, and I think it's always good to be reminded that um, you have to check in with people. You have to
Absolutely.
see how they're doing. You have to solicit their feedback. I'm 59 years old. I started my career at 21. I worked for Xerox, which, just for those who don't know, Xerox was like kind of the Google, Amazon of its day. Great company. I loved working there, and I really felt heard. And this is 37 years ago.
And you see how
Um,
you remember that. You remember that from 30 years ago, how you felt.
well, but the reason why I bring this up is everyone thinks it's new, but I had just happened to work for a really good company at the time. And then I started my own companies at 30, and then I grew as a leader. And part of being a good leader is understanding what type of leadership style you have.
Absolutely.
And then as you continue to learn and develop, you find out over a period of time, you're more definitive about your leadership style. Mine leadership styles was always about buy-in and not dictatorial.
Mhm.
Like, so I didn't tell somebody they had to do something. I wanted them to understand why we were doing it and then get their buy-in and then get their feedback. And part of the problem is that sometimes you can be intimidating because you're the executive director, you're the leader of the organization, and people think that they can't say something to you.
Yeah.
And I found that too, and it really surprised me because I always thought I was really open and willing to take a lot of feedback and in a really positive way. I don't mean the feedback; I mean me listening. And I still had to remind people I was expecting them to, I was expecting them to give me negative news or good news or bad news and stuff like that. So I wanted their feedback. And
Mhm.
once I opened that door, then it was usually really good. But I did that for a reason because I felt that people can't do their job if they don't understand why they're doing it and they don't understand and then they don't buy into it. They're not
Mhm.
going to do a good job if that was the case. So that was my style. That was what I learned over a period of time. Um, the thing that I've noticed with women leaders has been a tendency to be too and I don't like the word inclusive, to not be willing to make a hard decision, to want to include everybody, get too many feedback, too many cooks in the kitchen, and not be able to say, this is what we're going to do. I think a more experienced leader, regardless if it's a man or a woman, is willing to say, okay, we solicited feedback. I hear what you're saying. I may not agree with it. And these are the reasons why, and this is the direction we're going to go in. I think a very experienced leader is that way. Now, Jessica, would you say that person is dictatorial by saying this is the direction we're going to go?
No, no, I would not say it's dictatorial. I think, right, it still as a leader, you have to make those final decisions. And sometimes some people will not be happy with those decisions, but as a leader, you will understand that, and that's part of your role. What's different is, I don't think it are afraid to make the decision or don't want to make it. They do want to ensure there are not blind spots that they're not seeing and that they've gotten different perspectives. And I think, in my opinion, before it was very dictatorial, and then things would happen, come out, and it's, well, why didn't you consider this? Or why didn't you consider that? Because you didn't get enough various viewpoints and experiences and perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that's a leadership skill, regardless if it's a man or a woman, is so important. Now, again, yes, I can take the feedback. Doesn't mean I have to implement all of it. Doesn't mean I have to go down that particular path, but it may get my brain going and thinking of, oh, we didn't consider that. We didn't think about that. Thank you for sharing that. Or, that could offend someone if we do something this way, or harm someone, and not knowingly doing that. That to me is what's important, is getting that feedback, analyzing it, to then for a leader to say, this is going to be the decision. That's still part of their role. But to me, you have to consider that.
Yeah, I think I don't tend to categorize people in any way. So I think saying men do it this way and women do it. Don't get me wrong. I don't believe that. All right, you could easily have a male who's a pushover, and you could easily have a female leader who is dictatorial. So it just really depends on people's personalities. What it all comes down to. It doesn't matter. Whatever male female thing. I do completely believe that. Okay, so let's do some absolute or things that are definitely true right now. Definitely true that that the style of leadership right now that your employees expect is understanding. They love being included. Right. Yes. Not everybody, but everyone wants to be heard, but some people, it's harder for them to come out, and you have to kind of work through that. They want a stake in the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
They want to know the why. Very important. Why are we doing this? So I think, definitely leaders are really good explainers. What else would you add to that list of leadership styles that we're seeing now that is very common?
Absolutely. I like to use the word empowering. And it gets back to the why is an employee doing work, or we not dictating that work has to be done a specific way. It's task needs to be done, but I want you to feel empowered to make decisions about it and understand at the same time, it's okay if there's a mistake. It's okay if something fails, and that that's not seen as a punishment, I think is important. That way you can see it as a lesson and learn from it. And so I also like to use the word from a coaching. When we're giving feedback, whether it's positive or negative or type of criticism, the coaching aspect to it. Don't just tell me something, oh, I'm doing a good job, or I did that wrong. Let me know how you can help me improve. How do we do this together? Because my success is dependent on the success of the staff that work for me. And so I would add in those two elements when it comes to what our employees are expecting of their leaders. Is I want to be empowered to make decisions and do work, and at the same time, help me out when I'm struggling, or let me know and give me that substantive feedback on where I can make improvements, and where I am doing well.
Yeah, I like the word that you use, coaching. I think that's very true. I think coaching is I mean, let's face it, we're all running smaller organizations. You don't have a lot of middle managers where you are just leading. So, there's often three roles that a smaller organization has for the person who's running it. They're a leader, they're a manager, and they're also the worker bee. So they're doing three things, which is very, very difficult. You're not just leading. Maybe you're lucky enough and you can lead and do some managing, and you don't have to be doing the worker bee stuff, but and that's better. And I found as my companies grew, um, my job got easier because I was able to focus, only had to do one thing, which was
Mhm.
lead the organization. When you're building an organization, regardless if it's a nonprofit or for profit, you often have to be in all three of those things, and then you're at that point where you're like, you're running with your head cut off, right?
Yes.
It's a lot, right? Um, I think too, it is interesting. Like, I struggle a lot with giving feedback. Like, so the coaching you're talking about, it's a challenge because I see that with my kids too. You know, um, they the younger generation doesn't always take feedback really well, right? What do you mean I'm not doing a great job at my job, right? And even when you give them constructive feedback, uh, it's tough. You have to do it in a reasonable way. Would you agree with that? And you're younger, so would you agree that the younger generation doesn't exactly love when they're getting a bad, they're hearing that you're not doing something real well?
It's interesting, Steve, because I don't know if it's just younger generation. So I have employees
Huh?
that work for me that are older, more seasoned employees, and younger staff. And you bring up a point when it comes to getting what some say is constructive criticism or negative feedback. And I look at the manager or the leader that has to give that feedback. And one, I tell them, take yourself out of it and don't view it as I'm giving bad news or they're not going to like me or be my friend. You got to take yourself out of it. Understand this person can't learn. This person doesn't grow if you don't give them the feedback. So we're
Yeah,
going to start there. Um, the other piece of it is, and some people say we can't do the whole sandwich thing where you tell someone something positive and put the negative and
it
put the
doesn't
positive.
work.
I get back to the coaching because if I see an employee struggle, I'm giving the specific examples, but I use the word we. What can we do? And this not just on you, employee. What could we do to help you through this? I think when you take it from the perspective of we, and as a leader, hold yourself accountable in some of those performance issues as well. To me, it can put that employee at ease and say, you know what, I have been struggling, and this can help me if we have these additional meetings or change this process or do something this way differently. And so when we're taking a we, we're holding everyone accountable. We're not letting anyone off the hook, having them be accountable, but not hoping that employee doesn't see it as a personal attack on them and or who they are. It's not who you are. You're a great employee, and because you are, that's why you're here, and that's why I'm giving you the feedback.
Yeah, keep in mind, like, there's a lot that has to happen before you actually be able to lead people because they can't read your mind. And like, so a long time ago, I was really trying to improve as a leader, and I don't even know I don't think they have it anymore. It's a Dale Carnegie leadership course. And Dale Carnegie, for those who don't know who he wrote some really famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Mhm.
He was a motivational speaker, but he had a course. And, one of the things that you learn at this course is that everybody in your company needs to have a position results document, something that explains what their job is and how it is measured and what are the measurements that they have.
Mhm.
So if you're going to go and give someone feedback and you don't have any definable measurements for them, it's not fair because they
Absolutely.
don't know what is expected of them.
No.
And so, try giving a lot of feedback to things that are very subjective, because an employee is going to say, well, that's your opinion. I haven't heard that from somebody else. And honestly, if you have measurements in place, it makes this is another example. You got to have employee reviews.
Mm-hmm.
That's a professionally run company. So when you get into this rhythm of having a position results document, hiring with that position results document in place, making sure the employee understands the expectations, make sure they have buy-in, ask them if there's anything here that they think that's not fair, and then giving them feedback through employee reviews or even impromptu conversations. That goes a long way to making leadership better. Is that what you would think too? Is that still common today?
No, you're absolutely right, Stephen. As far as the the aspect of right, the employee reviews are so important because I even want to add to that, and even the prompt too, because at times you don't wait until the end of the year to tell the employee, "Hey, you haven't been doing a good job in these areas." You didn't give them a chance to make adjustments accordingly to make improvements. And
Yeah.
so at times it may mean we need to have an impromptu meeting. Even if you have regularly, say you have quarterly, meetings with your staff as far as their performance. Impromptu is okay. If you're noticing something, if you're like, they're turning in work, they're missing deadlines, have noticed something recently, address it then. Give that employee a chance to recognize that their performance has changed and then how they can adjust and how you can help them adjust. We have times, again, that comes to the aspect of care and empathy. You may have an employee going through something in their personal life that has nothing to do with work,
Yep.
but it's impacting their work performance. So by approaching it when you see it and approaching it from the perspective of, I've noticed these changes in your work performance. Hey, what's going on? How can I help? How can we do something different? That we to me is so important, and the care and the empathy that goes into a part of an employee review, because it can be stressful. It is stressful for employees when they're going through performance reviews, especially if this is going to determine their pay increases and bonuses and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And so, the onus is on us of how we approach those conversations, and that we're doing them constructively, timely, but also taking consideration what we could have done differently as well. If a person missed a deadline or didn't complete a task, do we explain it enough? Do we give them enough time to do it? Were we
Yeah.
thorough in our explanation? Did we ensure the employee understood what they were responsible for? And
Yeah.
so at times it does fall back on us as a leader, and that's why I go back to the we.
Yeah. There's a couple of things I'll add to that too. I completely agree. One of them is, so I talked about, so I went from being a bad leader to a good leader. Not great, but good. And it went through a lot of work. I really had to work on it. I know. So I mentioned the position results document. I mentioned having a hiring process that hires into matching that PRD. I mentioned before having employee reviews, and yes, we did it quarterly. The big one was at the end of the year, but we did updates quarterly. The other thing I would say that I thought was really good, and it really helped me be a good parent too, which was looking for something that your employees or your children are doing right and complimenting them on that. I've also learned not to overdo it. I don't mean to compliment. I mean looking for too much. But if you look for something that they're doing right versus looking for something they're doing wrong, it really changes the environment in your office. People positive, right? Because we all want positive feedback,
Yes.
right? So that was the other thing.
And can I add to that? Because I had
Please.
just a story from just 2 days ago. We talk about positive reinforcement. I had an employee that's done some work over the last month or so at one of our offices. And this was above and beyond her job description, above and beyond. And we made sure that she was shown appreciation. Took her out to lunch and another reward with that. And she says, "I'm surprised you gave this to me. I was just helping out doing my job." I said, no. That was above and beyond your job description. You
Right.
deserve that reward. And we need to show you that appreciation. And so that's a perfect example of that positive reinforcement of, wow, they saw what I did. They understood it was above what above and beyond. I jumped in and they showed me great appreciation for what I've done.
Yeah, I have another one too, and that is goes to the empathy part. Now, I am an empathetic person, but I grew up in the day where it was just starting to change, where work was work and your personal life was your personal life. And when I was growing up in the working world, that was just beginning to change, where you know you didn't work till 5 o'clock and go home. You worked. Now you work when you work. If you have to bring your kids to school, if you bring your kids to preschool, if you have meetings, okay, you go do those things and you work until you get your job done, right? It was much different back when I was younger, where it was more a silo, right? So I what I wanted to do was learn more about my employees. So once a month, I would take one of them to lunch, just me and them, and hear about their personal lives,
Mm.
and ask, how are you doing? How are things going with your wife? And just let them talk. I wouldn't get I wouldn't ask a lot of questions. A lot of times it would all come out. And it allowed me to get to know people and understand what kind of makes them tick and what's going on in their lives. And here's a good measurement. If your turnover in your company is more than 10%, it's due to your leadership and management in your company. If you're going to use the excuse that it's due to what they're getting paid, that's people don't leave an organization because of pay. They leave because they're not being treated well.
Mm-hmm.
There's no leadership, poor leadership, or poor managers. That's the reason why they leave. If it's under 10%, then you're probably running a pretty good organization. And that's a good way to look at it. If you have 20 or 30% turnover, there's a lot of turmoil going on in your organization, and it's not because of what people are getting paid.
I completely agree. And people talk about that sometimes in the nonprofit space, right? They could make more money and
All the
things of
time.
that nature. But we're in the nonprofit space because we have a passion for a mission of an organization.
Yeah.
That to us is more important. And people say they leave bad managers. They leave poor supervisors or poor managers that aren't showing appreciation, that aren't understanding, that don't have the care, that aren't listening, that aren't having them, they don't feel included or part of an organization. It is why they leave. It's not always about money. I definitely agree with that statement.
Yeah, I mean, you might get the one off where someone gets a
Yes.
20, 30% bump up. But, and listen, if you look at the surveys of what people want out of their work, what do they say that they want nowadays?
I've heard appreciation.
Appreciation, yeah.
I heard that was appreciation. A say in the work that they do.
I agree.
Again, you don't want a micromanager. It's a task needs to be done. I want to be empowered to get the work done. And and also having a voice is important. We talked about that earlier in the episode, is that my voice is at least considered.
Yeah.
At least hear it and consider it. That's all I can ask for. And that is very important to employees today.
Yeah, and the number one thing, I agree with all those. Those are all really, and it fits really well to what we're talking about today. But everybody who goes to work wants a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
They want a purpose. It's kind of one of the reasons why a lot of financial institutions, banks, and Wall Street people, they have a lot of turnover because people are getting they don't feel a purpose. In fact, they feel a bad purpose of what the organization is doing. And so, if you have a built-in, in your nonprofit, you have a built-in purpose.
Yes.
And don't just assume people understand who work for you that, oh, this is all good. Well, they want to, people who are employees want to know how they're contributing toward that purpose, that goodness. So I think you have to remind them, oh, the work that you're doing here translates into us being able to do this, which allows us to help these people. And I think that's a big part of a leadership skill, is being able to bring people along as well.
No, that's great. I will say our CEO recently started doing all staff meetings online, and we do what's called a mission moment, where we're looking at some activities or an event that happened relating to Girl Scouts in our community. And we share that with our staff. And it's just like you said, it's a perfect reminder of the work that we do on a day-to-day basis, how that supports Girl Scouts and the future leaders that we're working to build.
What does Girl Scouts Nation's Capital really do?
So we're a council. So again, we have the national organization, and our council is the Washington, D.C. area. So we're about 25 counties from West Virginia, Northern Virginia, and Maryland. We are about building girls of courage, character, and confidence. That is our mission. And we're doing that through various leadership programs, experiencing the outdoors. Our Girl Scouts are doing amazing projects in our community. They're learning about entrepreneurship. And when I say we're building the future leaders, we definitely are. And that's part of what we do every single day.
That's great. Well, it was a great podcast. It's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank so very, very much Jessica McLean from Girl Scouts Nation's Capital for coming on to today's podcast. If you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend, and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And also, if you like today's podcast or any of the other ones, please give us a 5-star rating. The Nonprofit MBA podcast is the top 1% of podcasts for our segment. And it's all because of those reviews, and we really appreciate that. And of course, if you're looking for a line of credit for your nonprofit, you can call us at 862-207-4118 or visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. Jessica, if anybody wants to get in hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
Best way to find me is on LinkedIn. It's Jessica McLean. I have an alphabet soup of letters behind my last name, and you'll see me with my amazing Girl Scout uniform on.
Good. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to thank everyone for listening, but not just for listening. I know everybody who's out there is trying to make the world a better place. And I want to thank you. I know Jessica wants to thank you too. Jessica and I are both doing our little part, and I'm sure in our personal lives, but it's you guys who are listening who's really trying to make the biggest difference on a day-by-day basis, week by week, month by month, year by year. I just want to remind you that you're no good to your family, your friends, your employees, or your cause if you don't take care and think of yourself first. This is a really hard job trying to solve today's problems, and it definitely can burn you out. And you need to be, as I would say, it's a marathon and not a sprint. So make sure you're taking really care of yourself. And we all know what that means. That means, do the things you like to do. Make sure you prioritize them, whether it be reading, meditating, working out, taking good care of yourself, going on your vacations, those type of things. It makes a big difference in leadership. And that was what the conversation was today. So other than that, I want to thank you for listening to the Nonprofit MBA podcast. And I just want to wish everybody a great day. See you later.